So what kind of suffering are we bringing to an end? To that question, if you ask it from different, especially tantric Buddhist teachers, different ones from different lineages, you would get mainly the same answer, but you would also get kind of different answers. Because in established Vajrayana, there's a lot of influence of shamanism still there. You know, my understanding of Tantric Buddhism is that it developed when Buddhist theory of selflessness and emptiness joined with shamanic practices. So that's why you could say that, you know, there are clearly like shamanic influences still, even if you go to a monastic community, Vajrayana community, you know, you can see images that are shamanic, practices that have very shamanic you know, expression, and in vice versa, if you go to if you go to meet a shaman, or if there's a shamanic session, like authentic one, not New Age shamanism, likewise you will see some Vajrayana flavors and influences. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because both in shamanism and in established Vajrayana there are practices for generating wealth, material wealth. Obviously there's practices for bettering health, physical health. There are practices for lengthening the span of life, long life practices. What else? There are practices for bettering life circumstances in general. And all of those, you know, these are just, how many did I say? 4 or 5 examples of very typical Vajrayana practices. Also in Pemako we do some health practices. There is some emphasis on health. But I guess not so much on the other ones. But to be honest, I kind of regret for not having done the wealth thing, you know, and the health thing. But the main thing, if you ask any Vajrayana Lama, they will say that the main purpose of Dharma is to become enlightened, just like Guru Rinpoche or any other Mahasiddha of the past or present. So just a moment. So what kind of suffering? Ben, could you be a bit more specific with your question? Because, you know, you've heard me talk about this dozens of times already. So if there is something you could specify a bit, maybe it would help me too.
So I guess, and a couple of us were discussing this, maybe trying to figure out if there's a difference between physical suffering, like pain, versus existential suffering. And I'm not trying to conflate. I think pain is obviously a different thing, but I mean, for example, so you're going to have pain, but then is there also a physical suffering attached to pain where you can remove the physical suffering, or is that something that also that remains with enlightenment? versus, I think it's clear, I think you made it clear that existential suffering is gone, but is there some other kind of suffering that remains? I guess that's the question.
Well, yes, the word suffering, dukkha in Sanskrit, it actually comes from a Sanskrit Hindi word that literally means pain. Like I've heard it explained in India that when somebody has a headache, for example, they say that they have dukh in the head. I've heard it being said, but but in Buddhist context, and suffering is kind of one of those things that translating dukkha as suffering is kind of we are stuck with the word suffering, although there are other meanings with it. It's just is it discontent or discontentment? That is much better, I think. Much more kind of down to earth. So it's not just some random suffering. It's a really suffering. It's a really particular type of suffering that we're talking with dukkha, existential suffering, and that's why. Oh, is it getting better now? Thank you. So I lost it. So it's a specific, particular type of suffering that we're talking here, and that's why I always, when I speak of suffering, I say existential confusion. Being lost existentially, not understanding what is the meaning and purpose of my life and life in general, and in that sense we're kind of lost. We are separated from life because we become enclosed because of this sense of self. So, but yes, of course, physical illnesses, physical pain, loads of examples in the history of Buddhism where you had Mahasiddhas who became ill and died, who became ill, had lots of pain, and suffered because of that physical pain, and healed or died of it. It's very much like I have some health problems myself, so even if my mind is clear, my body just has a different idea of the whole situation. So, and sometimes, my own experience is that sometimes you can make the physical pain cease, whether completely, to put an end to it, or momentarily. But yeah, that's, in my experience, that's pretty much the extent what a clear mind, how it can affect physical pains or physical illnesses. And I know that there are really kind of wild stories. I mentioned Yogananda's autobiography yesterday, and that book is full of really out of this world miraculous stories, from levitation to materializing objects out of air. And I remember there's one bit where Yogananda says that if somebody is an enlightened master, that they could, for example, if their teeth went bad, that they could, for example, create new set of teeth for themselves. So yeah, if that is true, if that is possible, and I kind of doubt it, because you know, Yogananda's book is kind of a book of fairy tales to make people really what is that, like enthusiastic about something. He speaks about this. I remember there's this one chapter of this tiger Swami, who is the guy who, with bare hands and bare fists, fights tigers. Come on. You might be able to fight Mike Tyson for a moment, but you will not fight a tiger. That's just it just doesn't work like that. So, I think it's probably he meant good by publishing it, but I just can't believe, many of those fairy tales, or what seem like fairy tales to me. So, if it is possible, I'm not completely saying that it wouldn't be possible to, basically create a new body. If you have a damaged body, to create a new body, maybe I leave it open, but my own mind becoming fully established in the basic state hasn't removed my physical ailments, and that's just how it is. That's what I can say from my own personal experience.
Ask a follow-up question. So,
can you repeat? I didn't hear from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, if that's okay. So, like, for example, while you may be experiencing some physical symptoms that may be suffering, do you also have like for example, the subtle bliss that you've mentioned and complete freedom that you mention a lot? Like, that's still there, but there's also the physical suffering on top of it?
Yes, there is condition of the body that might be, you might have a perfectly healthy body, or you might have some illness or some you can have good physical situation, or not so good, or poor or bad. All that you can have. Simultaneously, you can have a mind that is at zero bhumi, very dirty, very self-based, reacting all the time, impulsive, compulsive, and then there's the whole range through the bhumis to full enlightenment, Buddhahood. So these two can there's the axis of physical situation and axis of mental mind situation. So it can be in any way like this. Did I answer your question? Did I understand correctly what you were asking?
Yes, I mean, I think so. I mean, obviously it has to be directly experienced to really be understood, but yeah, I think you answered it. Thank you.
Oscar sent a message to the chat window that Shakyamuni Buddha, he died of food poisoning, according to the legend. So yesterday I mentioned about staying human. I was speaking about emptiness of emotions, which doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. We can still. I kind of struggled yesterday to express this, and I was thinking about this earlier today, that emptiness of emotions doesn't mean being without emotions. It means that what used to be confused samsaric mental and emotional habits, confused habits that cause that contraction, are now wisdom expressions. So that's why you have all these stories of Guru Rinpoche and other masters. I've also experienced it by now many times. being in a bit of a challenging relationship that where used to be anger and getting upset, it's just dynamic energy. There is emotion, reaction coming up, but there is no self in it. And because there is no self, me, I in it, that's why there's no contraction and there's no uncomfortable heat afterwards in the body. And that's why there's no brooding over the situation. Comes, goes. Comes, goes. Perfect peace before, during, and after. So yeah, being human. Something like on a personal note. Yes, I do kind of feel like looking into some natural medicines now because of my own physical ailments, and yeah, hopefully I find something useful that I can then also share with others. Oscar, please.
I just about emotions. For me, it's been like the last 6 months or 4, 5, 6 months, like this need to be able to express. So it kind of makes sense that this, like, it's not like this kind of putting a lid feels very samsaric, and then there is the untying and hopefully at some point possibility to kind of be able to express yourself. It's that non-expression is very samsaric for me, at least, like for my how it's been for me, my life.
It is very tricky, and it's an immense relief when you finally get to the point that you can when one can really live authentically, you could say, that you can, you have, you live a normal life and you have relationships and you meet people, and of course you disagree about things, and things don't go as planned. So there are all these, in the midst of it, there are all these emotions happening. And that's not bad at all. What is and causes us conflict and causes fights and falling out with other people is that sense of self being there. So yeah, it feels. I know exactly what you mean, Oscar, about that. How difficult it feels like. But I can assure you that it's wonderful to get to the end of it. It's so easy.
Thanks.
It's like in a word, effortless. It's just something that you get out of your system. One big problem less.
Can I mention something about the Tonglen?
Yes?
When we were sitting into it, I felt quite clear, And then you were saying, oh, just, beware you're not like dozing off. And I was thinking, oh, great, it's not me this time. But then we were, you're talking about the people in your sphere, in your kind of immediate environs. And I was thinking about the people here in my building. And I kind of have like, I've good neighbors, they're nice people. And I don't have any problems with them. And I was then I was like kind of going down through the building, and I was talking to one woman down the bottom, and but I went into a kind of dream thing, you know, and I said to her, "Oh, but you're like everything's grand with you, isn't it?" And she said, "Yeah, but I came from the other building, and it's not the same." And I pictured this like crack in the pavement, but I live in a state with like kind of apartment houses in it. And it's kind of like, you know, if the kind of tarmac breaks and you have kind of erosion and stuff. And I pictured this with a little stream going between the two buildings. And in the other building, they were talking about, oh yeah, but these guys are missing. Like there was some people missing from the building. And I was saying, actually, they're not missing. He's hanging in the pram shed. Like they have these storage sheds. And I pictured this guy, and I know his name. He doesn't live in the estate, but he lives nearby. And I pictured that he'd hanged himself in the storage shed. And that's why the people couldn't find him, or that he was missing. And then I was like kind of, you know, kind of conscious again, you know. It was very kind of bizarre, like, you know. And yeah, so I didn't get a chance to say it earlier, you know.
I'm not sure if I understood everything. So you met a lady downstairs, and you had this daydream about somebody having hung himself.
Kind of, yeah. Except it was when we were in the Tonglen practice, I was thinking about my neighbors.
Ah.
And I was thinking how, okay, I don't have a problem with any of my neighbors, you know, like they're all nice people. And I was kind of going down through the building, and the woman on the bottom floor, you know, I was talking to her, and then I went into this dream about she's telling me she was in the other building, and then that there's some people missing. And then I was saying, yeah, but he's not missing. He's hanged himself in the storage shed, and, you know, picturing the guy in the storage shed, you know.
Oh,
So,
well, if such things happen, and of course that's like a good old plain old dream that you had.
yeah.
What you can do is to just be aware of what happens in the dream. Yeah, that's from the perspective of emptiness practice, that is enough. Just observe. But of course, like we can have weird dreams. We all know that. I don't really have other comment to that.
I know. It's just I'm just you know, I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just, you know, but it kind of happens when you know, in this practice I get these strange, you know, where I think I'm awake, but actually I've fallen into a dream, you know. And yeah, it happens quite often in my practice, you know. More so like when it's been led on retreat or at you know, at the local Sangha sometimes, you know.
But that's not something that is important to understand, is that is not a mistake. If and when we have dreams, it is not a mistake. It is simply something that one can use for practice, and the main practice always is to become and remain aware of whatever happens. In other words, bring the light of awareness into anything in the mind, any object, any thought, emotion, subtle energy, be it dream or drowsiness. Just be aware. Yeah.
Thanks.
Rinpoche, after mind purification, have you noticed, I guess, as you said it, wisdom expression, or maybe your charge has affected those around you? I know, for example, Helena says that she feels ordinary, but just having her presence around feels very different. I just wonder if you've felt or noticed, or if others have noticed.
People have told me that they notice a difference and feel a difference. I don't, because something that I realized years ago, several years ago, was that when you finish mind purification, you basically stop having energetic sensations. Because big part of energetic sensations is whatever the energy that is coming to you. The energy sensation that you have is external energy touching your own samsaric karmic files. So when you clean out or karmic files, no sensation. So this is of course what we use in what I suggest you to use as ways to measure how much do you still have to go, because if you practice Guru Yoga, the bigger the change, the more you have to clean. The less the change, the smaller the change, only have very little. And then when you feel exactly before and after practicing Guru Yoga with Guru Rinpoche, then you're done. Same thing with bodhicitta prayers. Same thing with deity practice. So, yes, I've been told by, I haven't met but few people since last March until now. So, in November, there were a bunch of guests, Pemako students, joining for the retreat in Finland that we had. And also a guy stayed with me for a couple of days afterwards. I think some of them said about the influence of my presence on them. My girlfriend Kaisa has mentioned it a few times. What she says, like maybe once a week, that she just, when she's with me, she just doesn't get any impulses like she gets from her relatives or parents or brothers and sisters or friends. She feels these impulses coming, but she doesn't get those from me, she has said. But when it comes to the kind of a transmission effect, I don't feel a transmission happening. But I've noticed it throughout the year that when I start teaching, I notice, for example, when I see people on the screen, that when I talk or when I'm silent, I can see the influence on people. So people might close their eyes. The color of the skin changes. Your energy changes. So I have noticed that. Yeah. Those kind of things.
I have one more question about mind purification. Do
Yes.
you experience any fear, or are you completely done with that?
Oh, you have to, if you have finished it all, you're free of fear. Yes. All emotions, all energy.
But still, if you feel anger sometimes, for instance, so I'm thinking, how is it different from fear?
Okay. So let's think about anger. I try to express this in a different way that I have. So let's think of any situation recently that has made you angry, like properly angry, all of you. And remember how in that situation your anger, there was some initial initiator of that reaction of becoming angry, and then it just went in flames like anger does, right? We are not talking about some irritation, we are talking about anger here. So it always goes up in flames like starting a bonfire with gasoline. It just goes in flames. So then you have the flames, and you might be just with it, knowing, being aware that the flames are going, or you might be having an argument with somebody verbally while the flames are going. And then what happens is that when the argument is over with somebody, then little by little the flames start going down. Little by little the fire goes down, but you still have the heat from it in your body, this uncomfortable heat. And you feel at the same time you kind of might feel energized in a sense, but also when the few moments pass, you feel tired. And of course, throughout the whole reaction of anger, it's all been self-based. Me, you know, pointing fingers with others. This is what I think, fuck you, you know how it is with anger, with arguments and fights. So I'm sure we can all agree that there is a very strong selfish, self-based flavor in this samsaric anger. Can we agree on that? I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. Yesterday during the session we did, one of the sessions we did, I gave those couple of advanced emptiness practice, one taste pointers. And there was that one pointer where I said that, told you to check if your sense of me and simple presence or basic state are two different things or the same. If you got it that they are the same, that's an insight into one taste, like an advanced emptiness practice. Same thing with thoughts and emotions. I mentioned this yesterday. I said something like I told you to get a sense of thoughts and emotions, like you usually have them, like you usually experience them, and then contemplate the relationship of those two. Are they same or different? If they are the same, this is again a sign that you have gone quite far in emptiness practice. In Mahamudra system of Tibetan Buddhism, they call it one taste. And there's like a smaller one taste and greater one taste. 7, 8 bhumis, smaller one taste. 9, 10 bhumis, greater one taste. So what could be a good example about that? Is it possible for you can you imagine being in that situation or situation like that that previously would have made you samsarically angry. But can you imagine that situation coming up with same dynamic response? It is not anger exactly anymore, because you don't have a sense of self, sense of me, but you still express to something that is directed at you or said about you or said about something, that you still kind of meet that. What is that? It's you contact, you meet with that what is that, like impulse that comes to you? I don't know what to call it. When somebody, brings their samsaric stuff to you, and before you hit it with anger. But can you imagine that you can hit it with being dynamic, not being exactly angry, not becoming hot in the body, not getting a headache, not having any of that samsaric energy in there, but you still meet it with dynamically. I kind of struggle trying to communicate this, but this exactly, I mentioned it on this retreat as well, that there is a really it's, in a sense, it's like a propaganda, you could say, in Buddhism, that Buddhas are these ever peaceful, ever smiling and loving and beings, just having this tender smile on the face all the time. But in a sense it's true, but in other sense, from other perspective, it isn't at all true. So to answer your question as clearly as I can, it is not the same anger. It is dynamic energy, very dynamic expression, and you don't have the heat afterwards, and you don't brood on it afterwards. So you were asking about fear.
Yes,
Fear.
or I was just here, I was trying to reflect. I think I understand what you say about anger, but for fear, there is not a similar milder expression, is there?
What is that?
There is not like what you just explained about anger. I think I understood it. But for fear, there is not something similar happening, that you still, you experience it in a more pure form or something like that.
Fear. To me, like I have often discussed about my previous social anxiety, which at times was really pronounced. So, social anxiety, to me, it was like fear of other people. A lot of trust issues I've had, due to my childhood experiences. But have I had other kinds of fears? Not really. I haven't had a fear of death in a long time, because I've been contemplating death since I was a child. I saw death, one of my first memories, so it's been with me throughout my life. So fear of death was never an issue to me. Oh yes, fears relating to my children. what bad might happen to them. That was definitely an issue for several years. But I don't really have those in the same way. So, for example, now when I think of my children, it's more like active concern, but it's not fear. It's not. It just doesn't arise as fear anymore or anxiety related to their situation. It's more like concern, like healthy concern, normal concern. But maybe I'll just sum it up by saying that, you know, fear, anger, any type of emotion, the whole energy system, all of it, not even a 0.1% of it left unchecked. All of it. When we talk about emptiness of all phenomena, it means the whole energy body. All of it. Any thought, any kind of emotion, subtle energy during sleep, everything.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand that a little bit.
Good. Okay, it's 8:15, so let's do some practice. We still have a little bit time.